That's enough out of you. A weekly podcast where you'll hear the truth, or at least a closer version of the truth than most of the bullshit that's out there. Here are your hosts, Bill Rader and Sean Kane.
Hello and welcome to That's Enough Out of You. I'm your host, Bill Rader.
And I'm Sean Kane.
And you have found yourself listening to a weekly podcast where we talk about a variety of different topics. We talk about history. We talk about sports. We talk about the history of sports. We get into culture, movies, TV, music. All
Historical figures, Bill.
Like who?
JFK, RFK, MLK, mob characters like Jimmy Coonan and Gambino and John Gotti. We cover everything, buddy. You know why? Because it's our show.
It's our show. And also historical events. We've got, for the new year, we're going to open up the new year with, well, we won't tell you yet. We'll let it be a surprise, but we've got a series coming up on an historical event or series of events, I guess. So some exciting stuff coming up for the new year, Sean.
Yeah, it's been great, buddy. The feedback's been incredible. I mean, we're getting listeners from everywhere, all over the globe, buddy.
Yeah, really appreciate it. So, Sean, how you doing?
Good, buddy. Good. How's things with you, pal?
Oh, not too bad. Not too bad. Doing as this airs, I think we're actually airing this. This episode will drop like right around Christmas. So, kind of a perfect topic because we're doing this episode on Star Wars, and Star Wars is, or at least it had become sort of a Christmas tradition, right? The movies were coming out.
This would be our last episode for the year 2022, Billy.
Yeah, what a year it's been.
Yeah.
But before we get into our topic, we got some feedback on the Yankees Red Sox rivalry show that we did. My buddy Kevin came back, messaged me, and he said, "Hey, I'm screaming in the car right now because you mentioned that the Yankees started off as the Baltimore Orioles in 1901. You forgot to mention the period of history between 1903 and 1912 when they moved to New York, when they first moved to New York, and they were called the New York Highlanders." And he's absolutely right. I forgot that. I can't believe I forgot that, but also, not exactly recent history. So,
well, no, that's the thing. And our buddy Hopkins too wanted to know why we didn't go into more about the rivalry in the 1970s. And it's just, I don't remember any of those games. I really don't,
Yeah.
So we wanted to focus on, what we remembered, 2003, 2004, we put a lot of emphasis on.
Right.
But the 70s, I don't remember. And that's going to tie into why I don't remember tonight in our episode, because, in the 70s, I was into Star Wars, buddy.
Yeah, me too.
And I love playing sports. I was outside playing sports all the time, but I didn't really start following sports really till about 1980, buddy. That's when I first, my first sports memories, like 79, 80, football would be 79 maybe, and then 80 would be baseball.
Right. Yeah, same with me. I think it was, we were little. I mean, I know with my kids, they didn't care about sports. Certainly my son, he's 9 now, and he's just kind of starting to get into sports. Just even though he's been playing sports, we've had him in Little League and basketball and soccer and all that stuff. He never really cared about watching sports or following a team, and he's just starting now as he's 9 years old to get into that. So, when you're little like that, and we were little kids in the 70s, so we certainly weren't that interested in sports. And then
Bill, one thing I think it's these Yankee fans too want me to acknowledge those championships of the 70s, buddy, because I always tell them when they say 27 championships, I say, well, to me the score is 5-4 because in my lifetime of watching, the Yankees have 5 World Series and Red Sox have 4. but then they say, oh, the 2 in the 70s. Well, I don't remember them. I really don't.
Well, and again, as I said in that show, my memories of those 2 championships were mostly, with my dad watching it on TV and then having me as a little, 5, 6-year-old kid running up and down the stairs every time the Yankees did something. So my dad was kind of crazy like that. But no, I just remember the fun times like that and how happy my father was because his Yankees were his absolute favorite team.
Right.
So,
I know that. I had conversations with your dad. There's no doubt about that.
But that's really the memories I have of I think my first real memories of cheering for the Yankees were probably 81 when they went to the World Series and lost to the Dodgers. So that's probably my real, first memories of me actually rooting for the Yankees. And
yeah, my first memory is seeing my idol when I was a kid was Yaz and seeing Carlos Stremski bat, and that was towards the end of his career, his last couple of years. So that would have been like 80, 81, I remember, but that was my first memory in baseball.
Yeah. And then there's a story my parents always tell me of when the Yankees, when they were renovating Yankee Stadium, I forget this, I think it was like the 74 season, Yankees actually played in Shea Stadium, which was the Mets stadium at that time. And we went to a Yankee game at Shea Stadium. We lived in Queens, so we were pretty close. And my my parents always remind me that my attention wasn't on the game; it was on wiping my seat with baby wipes. That was what I was cleaning my seat the whole time. They said I had the cleanest seat in Shea Stadium. So,
well, that's the thing, Bill. When you're that young, 8, 9, 10, you're not going to really pay attention to the game. So,
right. Oh, anyway, what else is going on, Sean?
Well, Bill, I want to talk about one thing before we get into Star Wars. When we had that great episode with Alex Robinson, we talked about The Godfather.
Yeah.
The one thing when you asked that question, what surprised me about the movie or anything, and the thing that I said is how the Italian American community was so dead set against it. And the thing I wanted to emphasize on that is I should have went into more detail, but like we got to get out of this stereotype that about gangsters. Like when you throw that word around gangster, like, the movie The Godfather and even like Cosa Nostra in general should have no reflection on, the Italian Americans,
right.
That served the immigrant that came over and served in World War II, which I believe was the largest ethnic group that served in World War II, or the Italian American that, worked in the mines or the railroad, or all our buddies that listen to the show. Cause we have a big fan base that, our buddy, Big Angelo and Gene and Joey D and Pilchi and all these Italian Americans that listen to our show and they're loyal listeners. Cosa Nostra should have no negative light on those guys, and any more so than like Whitey Bulger or the Westies would have any negative light on me or my dad. My dad served, in the military. He, worked his whole life, paid his taxes. I mean, it has no negative effect. It's any different than Meyer Lansky has any effect on you or your dad. You know what I mean? So you have to just, get out of the stereotype that, every ethnic group, I don't care what the ethnic group is, they're going to have gangsters in it. They're going to have a small percentage. Like you take the Japanese have the Yakuza, the Chinese have the Triads, the Colombians have Pablo Escobar. I mean, every ethnic group is going to have an element of organized crime, but it shouldn't be a reflection of the entire group in general. And the other thing is, Bill, is like I said, the gangster is a gangster. Let's get out of this, businessman with ties or I get so aggravated with the Joe Kennedy bootleg and stuff. I mean, the difference with a gangster and a businessman that's corrupt is so, I mean, you can't even put them in the same stratosphere, Bill. I mean, let's take like Jimmy Coonan, like when the Westies killed the loan shark, I forget his name now, Ruby Stein. They killed Ruby Stein. They shot him like 7 times. And then after they're done shooting him, they cut his head off. And Jimmy Coonan passed his head around and he's like, here, feel how heavy it is. I mean, that's a pretty, intense level of brutality, Bill. I mean, a gangster's a gangster. I mean, we got to get out of this, just the street talk, because the only thing I ever got off the street, Bill, I had to scrape off the bottom of my shoe.
Right. Well, I
You
mean,
know,
every people are people, right? Everybody
they
is,
are.
and there's going to be good people and there's going to be bad people in every ethnicity, every religion, every,
Exactly.
whatever division you want to say, there's going to be good people, there's going to be criminals, and it doesn't really matter what you are. If you're a good person, that's great. If you're a criminal, you're gonna eventually pay the price for your misdeeds. And it doesn't matter if you're an American, if you're living here, if you're if you're someone who wants to come and live here. People are just good, either good or not. So that really angers me sometimes. I think when people generalize. I mean, it always angers me when
Sure.
people generalize.
It gets ridiculous. And, just like you hear things on the street, people say, well, I heard this, I heard that. Well, rumors could be started so easily, Bill. And
Right.
now with the documentation we have, like there's so much information on the mafia. I mean, we know we could go back and we could cover the career of any of these guys, just by their FBI files that's been released. And we know the CIA files, they were dealing with certain gangsters, and there's just so much information now. We know what businessmen they were dealing with and everything. So when you start making, you start listening to rumors on the street, well, you could go to documentation and say, well, there's nothing to back that up. That's just a street rumor,
Right. Yep.
So I just wanted to get that out of the way, buddy, before we.
Good point. Yeah, good clarification. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Let's get into Star Wars, pal.
All right, let's talk about it. So Sean, this is a topic I absolutely, I mean, I'm, smiling ear to ear, just so happy that we're talking about Star Wars today. One of my all-time favorite movies, just everything. I mean, you name it. I love Star Wars. I've loved Star Wars since I was 5 years old. This has just been, it's such a big part of my life. It's always been a big part of my life. So much of my childhood was focused on Star Wars and the movies and just, the toys, and we'll get into all that. But, and I know you're the same way, Sean.
Oh, absolutely, Billy. Like I said, that's why, I got into watching sports, later. I mean, when I was a kid, everything was Star Wars, buddy. There was two things that really my childhood that was impacted me was the band Kiss. I was really into the band Kiss. I don't know if you were.
No,
I think you said you weren't, right?
They scared me. I wasn't into the Kiss. No way, with their painted faces and
yeah, no. When I was young, I was like 5, 6. That I was in the Kiss, and then when Star Wars came out in '77, everything after that was Star Wars. Right. I mean, I had all the toys and everything, and all the kids in the neighborhood. That's all we would do was play Star Wars, and it just that was my childhood.
Yeah, me too. In fact, the first movie that I remember seeing in the theater was the original Star Wars. It was just called Star Wars at that time. I know now it's called Episode 4, A New Hope, but at that time it was just Star Wars.
Yeah, same here, buddy. That was my first movie too.
Yeah, and my parents always told me, well, we took you to Disney movies before that. You just don't remember. And no, I don't remember. I actually remember. It's so crazy what your brain, what stays in your brain over the years, because I couldn't tell you anything about 1977 or 78 other than, a couple of very either traumatic or, incredibly fun memories. And this was one of them. And I remember it was a birthday party where we went to, I think we went to McDonald's and then we went to the movies, or vice versa. And the movie that we saw was Star Wars, and we got there late because I remember walking in and the movie had already started. And the first image that I remember in my brain, and I said, it's amazing how you remember this stuff. But the first image I remember is seeing Princess Leia in that white, the white sheet or whatever it is, the veil that she kind of had on over her head as she's kneeling down to put the information into R2D2. And C-3PO is kind of watching this all happen. And of course, I had no idea what any of this was, or what, who these people were, or who these characters were. But that's the first image I remember. And then, of course, from there on, I just fell in love with it and saw it, got to go back to the theater again. I can't remember, Sean, because it originally came out in May of 77. And at that time I was still 4, but it was re-released, I think, later that year. And then it was re-released the following year in theaters. And I can't remember if my first time seeing it was 77 or 78, but I do remember that image.
Yeah, I not sure either, but I want to say I think I did see it in 77, but I'm not positive on that either, buddy.
Yeah. Well, the thing that really hit home with me was the action figures when you started to be able to buy the action figures. I don't remember the early bird. There was that cardboard stand up where you got the cardboard thing for Christmas and it said, well, we don't have the action figures now.
Yeah.
But, you'll get them, mail this in and we'll send you the action figures as soon as they're available. I don't remember that, but I do remember buying that first run of action figures. I could tell you who I had. I had
them all, buddy. I remember buying all. I had them all, buddy.
I think
Go ahead, though.
No, I think that first run. So there were 8 of them, I think, in the original run of Kenner action figures. And what's funny is at the time we lived in Cincinnati, Ohio. So that's where Kenner was located, which is really strange. But we just happened to be living there. And I don't think this has anything to do with it, but I remember that there were action figures all over the place in stores. So we had Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Obi-Wan, and they all had that. Remember the lightsaber that came through that, it was like in their arm and you pushed it out and had that little tip at the end of it that everybody's little tip broke off. That was, so of course we had that. I think I had R2-D2, Han Solo, and Chewbacca, and then I also had the sand person, whatever it is, the Tusken Raider.
Tusken Raider, yeah.
So and you had all those?
I had all of them, buddy. And my favorite characters were always Darth Vader and Obi-Wan. I mean, those 2 guys. I mean, they're always my favorite.
Yeah.
So
I had some vehicles too. What vehicles did you have, Sean?
Bill, I had them all, buddy. I had them all. Like if I kept my collection, buddy, I mean, it probably would have been worth something today. I had every single thing you can imagine. My uncles bought me. They would buy me everything. And me and my brother, we had them all. All the kids in the neighborhood would come over to our house, and we had every single thing. Anything we wanted, Bill, we'd get.
Wow.
I gotta say, we were kind of spoiled, buddy.
I wasn't that lucky. I got, I would get things, on my birthday, Hanukkah for me. And I know, like if my parents wanted to keep me quiet for a few hours, they'd buy me a new either vehicle or action figure or something. But I think the ones we had were we had that little land speeder.
Right.
That was really cool because it had the little wheels on the bottom and you could roll it across the floor. And we had an X-Wing. And I think and at some point we had the Millennium Falcon too. At some point,
I had that. That was great. I love the Millennium Falcon. That was great.
Oh, that was
and the X-Wing too. I mean, man, that stuff was great back in the day, buddy.
Now, I remember the play sets too. Did you have any of those?
Yeah, I had them all, buddy. I'm telling you, buddy. I mean, if I kept all my stuff, Bill, I mean, everything, buddy. I had everything.
I don't know what happened to any of mine. I know that
I don't either, buddy.
My mom moved a few times and I think they probably got lost in the move or thrown away or whatever, but yeah.
I think I gave away a lot of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish I kept it, buddy.
Oh, tell me about it. Me too. And then I think they're reissuing some of the vintage, the original figures, but you can't really find it anywhere. They get bought up so quick by collectors and eBay people. So any other memories from Star Wars before we move on to Empire?
No, just that, that it pretty much defined my childhood. Everything was Star Wars. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, like I said, my uncles, anything I wanted, they buy it. And my brother then would inherit it from me because he was younger, even though, you know, he looks a lot older, Bill, I know, but but he's younger, and you know, he would get them from me, you know. But yeah, I mean, it was just everything with my childhood, buddy, was Star Wars.
Yeah. And I should mention this episode, we're just going to talk about the original trilogy. We'll do the others. We'll do the prequels and the sequels and the Disney Plus, all that stuff. We'll do all that stuff in future podcasts. But for today, we're just going to focus on the three originals from the late 70s, early 80s.
And I think, Bill, one thing about the movie, and you can say this about all the originals, like just the storyline. Like, I think the reason why, yeah, we were attracted to it when we were a kid, but the reason why I think it endured, where today we're still, as grown men, we still like the series, is because of just the story. Like, the story you could put in any universe, anywhere. It's, you know, a story of just good versus evil. You know, and I think there's just such a great story that's what, you know, that's what it comes down to, you know, the good against the evil empire.
Right. And it's the hero's journey, right? It's that, it's
right.
That reluctant hero. And the one of the other things that I really enjoy about these movies is that you're kind of dropped into the middle of the story.
Yes.
It takes you a little bit to get your bearings and to figure out who's who. Of course, now, you know, everybody knows everything, everything that there is to know about Star Wars. But at that time, when these movies first came out, you were literally just dropped into the middle of this story. And
it's really so ingenious, Bill, because then it, you know, it gave, you know, Lucas the chance to go back and tell the, you know, the backstories and everything. And it's just an interesting way. And you do see that now more often. You'll see that in TV series or shows. You know, they'll do prequels on stuff, and, you know, like even The Sopranos did it. They did a backstory, you know.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and the crazy thing was the episode. Well, Star Wars was later given that episode 4 in the beginning of the opening crawl. It's something, it wasn't there in the original theatrical release, but I realized it, I think, for the first time when Empire was released, when Empire Strikes Back was released, and it showed episode 5 in the beginning of the opening crawl. And I thought, that's odd, because this is the second movie. So why is it episode 5? And, you know, and then of course, Return of the Jedi was episode 6. And then when I started seeing Star Wars when they started showing it on HBO, it was, you know, they had changed the opening crawl to, you know, to start with episode 4, A New Hope. And that kind of sparked, you know, in my head, like, what happened to 1, 2, and 3? Because there wasn't the internet back then. There wasn't, you know, you didn't know that Lucas had intentionally done this to start this story
right
in the middle. So I was always, you know, searching for 1, 2, and 3. I thought these were lost movies that I had never seen before. And I think I told you this story, Sean, when the first time we went to a video store, after we bought a VCR, I went to the video store and I ran up to the counter and I said, "Do you have Star Wars movies 1, 2, and 3?" And it was a girl who was working behind the counter, and she said, "I don't know." She said, "I don't think we have them in stock, but let me see if we can order them." And so I was like waiting for 1, 2, and 3. And this was, you know, 80, 84, 85.
Sure.
And the prequels weren't even a twinkle in George's eye yet.
No.
But I was waiting for you know, 1, 2, and 3 to show up at the video store. And of course, you know, months later I went back and there was a different person. There was a guy. And I said, "You guys were going to order 1, 2, and 3. What happened?" The guy kind of laughed at me. He said, "Buddy, they haven't even been made yet." He's like, "I don't, you know, they're not movies. They don't exist. It starts with 4, 5, and 6. Oh, that's funny. But I do remember, you know, going to the movies with my dad to see Empire. That's the other thing, Sean. It's also the experience of going.
Sure.
And I went with my dad. each time, every single movie, the original movies, the prequels, the sequels, Rogue One, we went with him, you and Jamie and your brother, we all went on some of those, and with my dad, and you could see it, the enjoyment that he got out of it, and just the experience of kind of going with friends and with family and enjoying them together. That was a big part of it too.
Well, sure. I remember the first one, I went with my dad, my grandfather, and my uncles. And then, Empire came out. I went with my dad, my uncles, and Jamie. And I just remember, like, me and my brother were the first kids in the neighborhood to see it, because we went the first day.
Yeah.
And then we came back, and everybody was like waiting for us to come back. What happened? They want to know what happened, and
Right.
of course we told them. And yeah, I just remember that, like, nobody else in the neighborhood seen it. We went the first day. And that was just a great experience, to see it with my dad, my grandfather, my uncles, and my brother.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do remember, it's funny because we're part of that generation where we got to see Empire, as it came out for the first time. So it was like, we didn't know that Darth Vader was Luke's father. That wasn't part of the
No.
That wasn't part of the zeitgeist. That wasn't part of the universe yet. It was.
And I remember telling everybody in the neighborhood that, and they were shocked. They couldn't believe it,
And I didn't believe it either. I don't know about you, but I didn't believe it when he said it. I remember thinking that, first of all, this is a robot. How could he be Luke's father? Luke is
right.
human. Darth Vader's a robot. It didn't really, I know they had that scene in Empire where you can see his head and then the helmet coming down over his head. And that's supposed to kind of give you a hint that this is actually a human being in there, but it didn't, obviously that didn't clue me in, because
me either, buddy. Me either. Yeah. I didn't understand it,
And then the other thing was the little green guy. We had seen pictures of him, or maybe just little images of him in the trailers, but we didn't know who he was. And then when it was revealed that was Yoda,
right,
that was a surprise to us as well. Now everybody knows him as Yoda, but
sure, he's such a great character, Yoda. I mean,
but you couldn't believe that that this
little guy was
little
the
green
trainer.
Muppet was the greatest Jedi ever.
And the whole thing with the Jedi and the Force, it's just such a great story. It's just, that whole thing always interested me, the Jedi Knights,
and the Force being such a, like a magical power that, it really, for me, well, we won't really get into the prequels now, but it's something that if you can't explain it, if you don't try to explain it, it's so much more impactful sometimes.
Sure. Like and certain people were able to, use the Force, and certain people weren't, and certain people had, was stronger in them than others. It was just the whole thing is interesting, buddy.
Really, really was. And then, then we kind of get into, the Return of the Jedi, which was originally, of course, Revenge of the Jedi. If you remember that, Sean, they originally advertised it as Revenge of the Jedi, and then it was changed to Return of the Jedi not too long before it was released. And, but I remember a classmate, forget what grade I was in. I think it may have been in 4th grade or 5th grade when that movie came out. But I remember a classmate had the graphic novel, the sort of the cartoon comic book of Return of the Jedi. And he brought it to school, and I read it cover to cover. So I unfortunately kind of knew most of what was going to happen.
Yeah, me too. I had that comic book.
Yeah.
I wish I kept it, Billy. I wish I knew where it was now.
The same with all that stuff, though. I had so much merchandise, so much stuff from Star Wars that I wish I knew. I wish I knew where it was or Wish
I
I
know,
could
same
figure
here,
out.
buddy. And comic books too. I mean, it's so many.
Yeah. But so I was 10 when Return of the Jedi came out. So I was absolutely the perfect age for that movie. You know, the Ewoks, people say, oh, the Ewoks, it got too cartoony or it got too, too childish, but that was perfect for me because I was 10. I was a child. So I love the Ewoks. I love that whole, just everything about that movie. To me,
Oh, I loved it too. I'll take the Ewoks over Jar Jar Brinks, buddy.
But that image, Sean, and tell me if this is the same for you, of Luke appearing with the black robe and the green lightsaber. To me, like, that was just
Oh yeah,
the coolest image. That was, like, for me, the greatest.
yeah. It was. That was awesome. And that was a great movie. And like you said, we were the perfect age. I'm like, I'm a little bit about a year older than you, but
Yeah.
perfect age to see that movie.
And
I
then
mean,
that whole summer, so that was the summer of '83, and we were living not too far from a Second Run movie theater. And Return of the Jedi was in that theater most of that summer. So I remember riding my bike during the day. I would just hop on my bike right over to the theater and go and I think it was like $2 or whatever, and go and sit and watch Return of the Jedi. Probably saw it, 10, 15 times in the theater.
so for the whole series, Bill, like the originals, like who was your favorite characters? I mean, I know Princess Leia has got to be up there, right?
Yeah, I did.
As a kid,
Even though I didn't, that was like the one action figure I didn't have. Although I did end up getting the Bespin Princess Leia
right.
at some point. But no, I did. I did like Princess Leia. And I always wondered why she kind of went from being the hero. She went from being like one of the heroes to in episode 6 in Return of the Jedi, she kind of wasn't. She was sort of like the damsel in distress. And although she did, later on in the movie, she did kind of become a hero. But
Right.
I wondered why they changed her character. But no, my favorites were, Luke, of course, and Han Solo. And I'm trying to think if there was any, particular character that I liked. I mean, Luke was definitely my favorite. So
How about Jabba the Hutt?
I wasn't a big fan of Jabba the Hutt, although we did, Sean, and I'm sure you had this. We did have the Jabba playset.
Oh yeah,
which came with the big Jabba the Hutt figure and his henchman and that little guy, whatever his name was.
right. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many good characters, though, Bill. Like Boba Fett was always the character I liked.
Mm-hmm. I never understood the whole Boba Fett craze, though, because in those movies he didn't really do much.
No, he didn't have a big part. You're right. It was just I don't know, maybe because of the fact that he didn't have a big part, people wanted more, because he's a really good character. But you're right, like but there was a craze though. It's kind of like a cult following with Boba.
Right. And he had a cool look about him, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The armor and the rocket jetpack, all that kind of stuff. That was pretty cool.
And then the whole scene, the cantina when they went in there and Han shoots Guido.
Right.
I mean, we've all been in a couple bars that kind of looks like that. I know.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever shot anybody and then.
Well, no, I didn't say that.
Bartender a little.
Sometimes you walk in a bar and it's like, whoa, boy.
Oh yeah. Well, that cantina scene is a huge reason why Star Wars was so successful.
Yeah.
And if you go back and look at the, some of the making of documentaries in Star Wars, that it didn't look like that originally. There was some kind of really strange looking.
Yeah.
Not that those characters weren't strange looking, but I think Marcia Lucas, George's ex-wife, had a lot to do with re-editing that whole sequence and making it as cool as it was.
Yeah, that was a really great scene. And then for me, like the other thing is just how Obi-Wan, it kind of takes Luke under his wing and training him and stuff. That was always to me fascinating.
Right.
Because Obi-Wan, that was just a fascinating character to me. And Alec Guinness played that so perfectly.
Yeah. Even the ghost, the Force ghost, Obi-Wan
Sure.
was great. And he gave, so the pivotal scene for me, and I think for all of Star Wars, was that first scene with Luke and Obi-Wan, where Obi-Wan explains basically everything, kind of gets, as I said, we got dropped into the middle of this story.
Right.
And we're sort of, Luke is kind of the representation of the audience, right? So he doesn't really understand everything that's going on. And Obi-Wan says, he explains the Force to him. He tells him who his father was. And kind of brings the audience up to speed. And that scene where he's explaining, how the Force is, it's everything around you, it guides you, and all that stuff. That was just an amazing scene.
Yeah, it really was. And like I said, Alec Guinness he was so great in that role. He really was.
Yeah.
But what other memories for you, Bill, from the series?
Just all of the other kind of ancillary stuff, some of the spin-off things, the droids cartoon that came out, that was on Saturday mornings.
Right.
I had no memory, and it's probably a good thing, of the holiday special. That was something I didn't even know about until much later on, but I know a lot of people did. That was something that a lot of people did know about, but I had no idea about that. But the toys and the costumes and the comics, the cereal. I had the Star Wars lunchbox.
Yeah. Who didn't, buddy? Who didn't?
Yeah. And then there was nothing. There was nothing for a long time. It was
right.
83 was when Jedi came out, but there really wasn't, there was no fresh, material. There was no movies on the horizon. There was nothing.
No. And then the prequel wasn't until 99, right? The first one.
That's right. But if you remember, though, they re-released.
Yeah.
Special editions came out in, I believe, 97.
Right.
So, you could get that experience again of going to the theater. And I do remember going to see all three of them.
And I'll tell you, Bill, I still love going to the movies. I really do. I know a lot of people now with streaming services would rather watch it at your house or stuff, but I still love going to the movies, and I go every chance I can get. And I think it's because of that first experience with Star Wars. I think that's why I still like the movies. There's nothing like that experience,
Yeah. I totally agree with you. It's magic. You're sitting there and there's this enormous screen and you hear everything that's going on and you just lose yourself for a couple of hours.
Right.
Get about all the stuff.
And that was the movie, that defined me from the 70s, was Star Wars. I mean, later on, I would watch, like Jaws, I would watch later and really like that movie. And then, of course, The Godfather. Yep. But when that came out, I was way too young.
Right.
So Star Wars was the first movie really that, I got onto.
And when you listen to filmmakers and directors today, they all tell you the same thing. Is Star Wars was what made me want to do this.
And again, it's such a great story. It comes down to good against evil,
Right. Yep. So yeah. And then, future podcast, Sean, we'll dive deeper into some of this stuff. We'll talk about the prequels. We'll probably get some guests on. I know there's a lot of folks, some of our friends want to come on and talk with us about Star Wars and talk about the prequels, talk about the sequels. We'll do some of the Disney streaming shows and some of the other stuff. But if you're interested in more podcasts about Star Wars, I'll just mention a couple of really good ones. One I want to plug. So we had Alex Robinson on a couple of weeks ago. He came on to talk about The Offer with us, but he does a Star Wars podcast with a guy named Pete the Retailer. It's called Star Wars Minute. And they talk about all of the movies. They break the movies down actually 1 minute at a time, if you can believe it.
Now,
So
did they just do the originals, Bill?
no, they did all of them. They did
Wow.
every Star Wars theatrical movie. So they did, the originals, they did the prequels, the sequels. I think the only one that they have, so they did Rogue One and they did Solo as well. The only one that they have left to do is episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. And I think Alex told us that's gonna come sometime early next year, or maybe closer to the spring, I think. But so I would highly recommend going back. It's a lot of fun. They have a lot of the same experiences that we do. And they kind of create their own vocabulary of things in Star Wars that kind of stayed with them for all these years. It's a really, really fun podcast. I highly recommend it. It's time consuming because, they do, like I said, it's every single minute of every movie. So there's quite a few episodes, but if you are interested in more Star Wars podcasts, that's a great one. And then the other one, of course, I would recommend is one called Rebel Force Radio. And that's a weekly podcast where they kind of talk about all the latest news and everything. They have a lot of great guests. They're a lot closer to Lucasfilm. They actually have a connection with Lucasfilm. So they have some guests come on. And they also they'll do like an after show. Like for instance, with Andor, they did an after show after every Andor episode. And those guys are really good too. I'd highly recommend Rebel Force Radio. So those two podcasts, if you're interested, Star Wars Minute and Rebel Force Radio.
And Bill, just to tie an interesting article that I just read about Andor, tying into one of our other episodes that we had, the article said that the funeral scene in Andor, they took that from real IRA funeral in Ireland. The IRA funerals, the like military style funerals, they took that whole thing from that. And there's a couple articles on that you could read if you're interested in it. So that's pretty interesting, ties into, some of our other episodes.
Yeah, I know the guy, Tony Gilroy, is the guy who created the Andor series. And I know he's a real history buff. He's a guy, he took a lot of stuff, I think, from history he did Rogue One, and then of course the Andor series, and a lot of stuff from history for those projects.
And Rogue One was really good too. I really enjoyed Rogue One.
Yeah, we'll have to do an episode I think we'll do just one episode on Rogue One, because that was such a great movie. It was really the first time, that we saw Star Wars in the theaters that had nothing to do with Luke Skywalker.
Right.
We did see, of course, Darth Vader was in it, but that was really the only.
But it tied so brilliantly into, New Hope.
Right.
Just the way it goes into the ending. It's great.
Yeah,
the way they end. And of course, Vader was unbelievable. That last scene with Vader.
It was great.
Yeah,
brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's so much Star Wars now, Bill. And like you said, for such a long period there, it was just the originals, And now there's just so much more material out there.
You get overwhelmed. You can get overwhelmed with everything.
You could. And there's a lot of people hate this and that. I know a lot of people don't like the prequels and this and that, but I enjoy all of them, to be honest with you. I mean, there's some I enjoy a lot more than others, obviously, but I don't sit there and say that one I hate or that one. I enjoyed them all. I think they're all entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, if you want to sit there and pick things apart, there's always stuff you can do that with. But
well, sure,
you really just want to sit and I just look at, again, I kind of go back to looking at my son who's 9, and he just loves it all. He loves Star Wars, anything Star Wars. He just, he'll sit there and just watch it and take it all in. And he asks me a million questions about it. And then he'll watch YouTube videos and tell me, oh, Dad, did you know that they did this and this? And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that, buddy. But it's, it's that innocence of a child and just enjoying it. And really that's what it's for.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you want to sit there and criticize and pick it apart and say, well, this doesn't make sense, or, this wasn't, I hate the term lazy filmmaking. I hate when people say, oh, it's lazy filmmaking. It's lazy storytelling. Oh, everybody's got their own opinions, but Anyway, all right, Sean. I think we've done enough on Star Wars for today, but it was a great episode. Such a fun topic for me. And nice.
Yeah, same here, buddy.
Yeah, and we'll come back. We'll revisit this and talk about the others, talk about all the other stuff. And I even want to at some point kind of delve into the origins. I know, Lucas had the original treatment of Star Wars that it was called The Star Wars, the Adventures of the Star Killer, all those different ones that you can actually, find the scripts. If you go online, you can actually find those original scripts.
Right.
Really cool stuff. And a lot of that stuff kind of resurfaced in later movies, some of the characters and the terminology.
Yeah, there's so many lanes you could go down, buddy, when you're talking Star Wars.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah.
We'll revisit this again, no doubt about it.
Yeah, we could talk about this for hours. But all right, guys. So great episode, Sean, and thank you everybody for your continued support of our program. We're really having a blast doing this, and we'll continue to do it.
Keep the feedback coming, keep the emails coming, and even if it's negative feedback, we want to hear it.
Yeah, we'll take the feedback. We'll take any kind of feedback. We're just having fun. We're just having fun doing this. We're enjoying it. We're on Facebook if you want to follow us there, on Instagram and Twitter, and of course on YouTube. As I always say, we have our YouTube episodes up on YouTube the day prior, so our podcast episode drops on a Friday, but you can get the YouTube episode. You can get the version on YouTube on Thursday, as long as I remember to upload it to YouTube. And then we also would appreciate if you subscribe, because Sean, remind our audience how much it costs to subscribe on YouTube.
Does not cost 1 penny, Bill. All you do is sign into your email and hit that red button, subscribe. That's it. And
then you get notifications, so you get pop-ups. So if we know at least a couple of our listeners are anxiously awaiting our next episode to come up. So when they get that notification, I just envision this big smile coming across their face, and they get to go right out to YouTube and listen the day before.
Yep.
So
some people prefer YouTube and others like it on Apple, but yep. We're everywhere, buddy. We're out there everywhere.
And if we're somewhere, if you have a favorite podcast app that we're not on, send us a note. Let me know, and we'll get on that one too. All right, Sean.
All right, buddy.
All right, that's enough out of you.
Good night, everybody.